in a move that I think was a good move. Boston yesterday signs Dominic Moore, who can be good on faceoffs, good fourth liner. Best days are probably behind him. It doesn't really change my prediction for how the Bruins are going to do. But there's an interesting trend going on. It's the tryouts. And I knew this was coming. Chris Higgins gets a tryout with the Flames. I hope he makes it. I like Chris Higgins a lot. He took the demotion to the AHL last year like a champ. And he'll play for cheap because it's not about the money for him. It's about playing hockey. Very good player. His hands kind of left him over the last couple of years. So if Calgary can find a way to wake them up and get him back to where he can be, he can be a 20-goal scorer, probably at best at this point. More realistically, I would expect probably 12, 13 from him in a bottom six role, but he's a good player. Rafi Torres gets a tryout with Carolina because the world hates me. I'm not sure why. And then the same day, Ron Francis gets an extension as the guy running the show. Maybe this was a move that he made. Like, if you guys don't extend my contract, I'm just going to sign Rafi Torres, and he'll be a Hurricane for the next 3 years. And like, you're going to give him a 3-year contract? No. Well, you better sign me then, or I'm going to sign him. So he gets his extension. All kidding aside, I really, at this point, don't understand what Rafi Torres brings to a team other than controversy and suspensions. I guess we'll see, but it's a trend now that if you're a player who your best days are behind you, you're not necessarily a top six guy, you get a tryout, you don't get a contract right off the bat. So, in that way, Dominic Moore was the lucky one yesterday because he straight up got a contract. There's going to be player tryouts all over. I'm guessing any team with room, 3 or 4 contracts at this point, I think you're going to see guys getting invited. And then they have to earn a job in training camp. They have to earn their place. And then you're going to see guys who don't make it go to the minors and sign tryouts with AHL teams, catch on there, and they could be the next Mike Keane. Mike Keane had a good living and maintained a good career with the Manitoba Moose, Vancouver's farm team at the time, and he did well. It's all in how you approach it. Nolan Baumgartner is one example, too, of a guy who was a first-round bust. There was a lot of talk about that, but by the end of his career, the talk was the fact that he played so many games in the American League and he helped so many young players along the way. So it's all in how you treat it. Don't see it as failure, just see it as a movement. And is it a move down? Yes, but you don't have to view it that way. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these guys get contracts. Like I said, I hope Chris Higgins does. He's a good player. And there really isn't a whole lot else to add other than it's that salary cap. You don't want to waste a roster spot and $1 million on a guy and then have him show up for camp out of shape, or really find out just how far off a cliff he's gone in terms of his playing ability. So that's why these player tryouts exist. They're not a new thing, but I can remember way back. Laurie Boschman, at the end of his career, had a tryout with Vancouver, and I really had hoped at the time he would make it because Boschman was one of my favorite players at the time, but he didn't make it, and that was the end of his career. That's usually the way it works. It's usually at the very end of players' careers. Now it's like, some guys who can still play in the NHL are getting tryouts, and it's frustrating. At least I would think it's frustrating for those players. This should have a list of who's still free agents in it, I would think. Maybe it doesn't. I haven't checked the awkwardly English one to see if there's. I think maybe. This one probably doesn't. Alright, I'll put that there. I remember now I've got this all opened up to the page that I need for my Dallas preview. Small dress for my Dallas preview. But this is the kind of thing that these could build up. There could be a bunch of them, and I just want to address it all in one video. Because it's not, no insult meant to any of these guys, but it's not really video material in terms of just one player tryout or, one guy getting a shot to prove he can still play in the NHL. It is for him. I'm sure he's very excited with the opportunity to still play the game after spending his summer sitting around waiting for what's going to happen. All right. So who would be on my list if I'm going to have tryouts? Ben Scrivens will probably get a tryout. He shows us unrestricted in here. This is the NHL pool guide. Bartkowski, I can't believe he doesn't have any kind of a tryout. He wasn't that bad in Vancouver. I mean, he wasn't great, but he wasn't that bad. He's a top 6 defenseman. Brendan Gormley's played himself out of the NHL. He can't ask Mitchell because Willie Mitchell's probably retiring due to concussion issues. Chris Russell's still sitting. I think he's going to be out of the league altogether. At this point, I think he's done. Marek Zidlichky, whose best days are well behind him. Steven Giunta, I'm surprised, he has no offense, but he can still be a serviceable fourth line guy. Cody Hodgson, he's done. If he hasn't signed in Europe, he should because he's done. There's Dominic Moore, who only had 15 points in 80 games last year. Brad Richards is retired. Mike Richards is probably going to follow him. Rene Bourque. I remember when he was considered a scorer. I never bought it, but oh well. There's Higgins. Gagne's been signed. Perry's been signed. And Perry only had 29 points, 61 games. He's not a game changer. Santorelli's still out there. I think he's done at the NHL level, though. I think he'll end up in the American League or Europe. Alex Tanguay's still out there. I think Tanguay will probably end up with a tryout. I could see Colorado. Come on, Toronto would be the obvious place for him to land. There's Torres. He's a piece of shit. Played 6 games in San Jose's American League franchise last year. Had no points. 5 penalty minutes. Probably a dirty hit. That's probably what it was. Steve Bernier, who's done. Brad Boyes, who's also done. Hoodler's signed by Dallas. David Jones is still out there. He's serviceable. Josh Juris was signed. Christopher Steeg's gone to Europe. Verbata's gone back to Arizona. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, it's a pretty. Steve Downey will probably get a tryout. They should stick him at the Carolina camp with Torres. Maybe they could just do some kind of drill in the corner where they repeatedly cross-check each other till one of them gets injured. I don't know. That's it. That's how tryouts work. It's not exciting. It's not rocket science, and I feel bad for these guys. Most of them not Torres, um, because they're playing for the rest of their careers right now. You end up going to Europe because you can't cut it at your training camp. It's done. You're probably not going to get an invite again next season. So I wish these guys the best. Especially Higgins was a warrior in Vancouver and needed a change of scenery. So Calgary would make sense. A lot of Vancouver players go to Calgary. Calgary players go to Vancouver, and usually it regenerates their career when that move happens. So hopefully that tradition continues because he's a good player. He's just not the offensive player he once was. Anyways, that's it for that, and I will be back soon with my Dallas preview. But that's how player tryouts work, and it's it's got to be rough for guys who are in their mid 30s. They've got a wife and kids at home, and now they're playing for their career. Yes, they make a lot of money in their career. Yes, they get paid really well to play hockey. But still, when you're in your mid 30s and your career is basically over, it's got to be rough. And you're going into a training camp with kids who are trying to earn their first jobs. You may not be as fast as those kids. You have to be smarter. You have to play smarter, and you have to be obviously smarter. Because if your game is equal to one of these kids that they got coming up, well, they're going to keep the kid and they're going to cut you because that kid has potential to grow and you probably don't. It's a lot of pressure. So these guys on the tryouts, I usually keep an eye on them in preseason games. I do watch preseason games for that reason. I watch it to see how the rookies are going to do and to see how these veterans on a tryout how they're doing. Um, and it'll be interesting to see how it works for these guys this year. Anyways, that's it. I'm going to do my Dallas review now and have that up soon.